Okay, okay. So let's get started with our XML round trip. This first lecture is primarily going to focus on what we call the pre-grade, which is cleaning up the offline edit, and the exporting of an offline reference file, which we are going to need later on. So first, let's tidy this up. We have a fairly messy edit here with buried clips and some things floating around. Ideally, what I want to do is I want to try and bring this edit down to a maximum of 2 timelines. Now, what we've got here does not conform to any kind of logical sequence. It's simply just a set of brushes kind of cobbled together. So we're not looking at a coherent edit here. This is simply for demonstration purposes. And if I go through and take a look at what we've got some cutaways, and then we have some stuff on a higher track, and we've got plenty of buried clips. Now, a buried clip is something like this down here. It's underneath another clip on the timeline, and that can actually make navigation issues within Resolve. So it's good practice to try and get rid of these overlaps unless they are necessary for some kind of blend effect, a transition from one into the other, for example. So let's start tidying this up. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this in, and then I'm going to bring this down here. I'm also going to trim this clip, and I can then bring this one down. Notice I'm trimming the video here. I don't want to interfere with the audio too much if I can help that. So, unless I need all of these things to overlap, I'm going to try and get rid of as much as I can and just make this neater and more tidy. I can leave these clips here on top if I like. There's no practical purpose for the picture to overlap, so I am just going to trim these down. And then let's say, for argument's sake, there's a practical purpose for this. Maybe there's going to be a picture-in-picture or something. I can leave this as it is. If there's a reason for this overlap, that can be okay. So that's a very basic look at a pre-grade. We basically want to bring our video down to 2 tracks, and then we're going to keep track 3 and higher clear for things like graphics, black bars, overlays, credits, what have you. So we don't want any of those elements coming down here because we want to turn the higher tracks off before we export this. We don't want titles, we don't want subtitles, we don't want graphics interfering with our grade. So I'm going to deactivate these higher tracks at this point. So I've done my basic cleanup here. The next thing I want to do is I want to export an offline reference file. Now, an offline reference file in Form appears similar to a baked master file, but its function is completely different. We do not grade with an offline reference file, so it is okay to export it with a more lossy codec like H.264 or H.265. We actually don't want the offline reference to be too heavy or take up too much space. So I'm going to export a H.264 render. My Control-M shortcut refusing to work because Adobe is marvelous. So where it says QuickTime, I'm going to choose H.264. I'm going to make sure that the video is on match source. And then that's all I'm really bothered about. Really, all I'm looking for here is a visual reference to make sure that the edit is correct later on, and we will go through that in the next few lectures. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to give it a name, and I am going to call it demo underscore offline. Oops, typing with one hand is a little bit awkward. Demo underscore offline in block capitals, because this is the demo project and it is an offline reference file. Always clearly name your offline reference files. You don't want them to be confused for anything else, because they are made with very lossy, low quality codecs to save space. Okay? I'm going to hit save and I will export this. Now that we have our offline reference file exported, we need to export our XML also. So in order to do that, with the correct timeline open, I'm going to go to File, Export, Final Cut Pro XML. And then I need to choose where I save it, and I need to give it a name. So I'm going to call this one Demo XML, and let's spell demo correctly. Typing with one hand is awkward. Now, in order to hand an XML and a project over to somebody else, you must give them the offline reference file, the XML, and the footage with which you have been editing. Without those three things, this is not going to work. The XML does not contain any footage itself. It is simply a text document. It is a text document that describes our edit. Resolve reads it and reconstructs the timeline edit by edit based on what it finds. Okay? So in order for an XML conform to work, you must have the offline reference file, because you need a basis for comparison. You must have the XML itself, unsurprisingly, and you must have the appropriate footage for the project. Okay? I'm going to save this XML here, and now we are done with this part of the demonstration. In the next lecture, what we will do is we will look at setting up bins and importing our footage properly for the conform. So, click on through to the next lecture.